In this video, I want to continue to look at uh, different denominations, this video being on Catholic, and particularly looking to their definition as best they give on adultery and divorce and or remarriage. I've Googled Catholic Encyclopedia and then pulled up the word study out of an encyclopedia of adultery. As you can see, it is the purpose of this article to consider adultery with reference only to morality, which means that the study of adultery as more particularly affecting the bond of marriage will be found under the head of divorce. I like how simple that is. If you want to know the specific definition of adultery, it's found within the bounds of marriage, divorce, and remarriage. And that's to follow the definition of Mark 10:11, essentially. The discussion of adultery may be ordered under three general divisions, and this whole study under the morality is outlined according to these three divisions. Under the nature of adultery, adultery is defined as carnal connection between a married person and one unmarried, or between a married person and the spouse of another. I want to insert Mark 10:11 into their word usage to see if it's even if it fits as a puzzle piece inside of what they're saying. As I look to the word carnal, Strong's concordance or exhaustive concordance shows that it's a word used by Paul, and so already there is a Paul influence into the definition here. The Oxford Dictionary defines carnal as relating to physical, especially sexual, needs and activities. And I'm going to paraphrase it before it takes shape into anything sexual. The physical includes the flesh. And so I'm going to change that meaning into synonymous with the word flesh. And of course, that's one of the marital considerations in spousal union, one flesh, that is, or flesh one. And so a flesh connection is a word connection is synonymous with joined together or a union, such as that which marriage is. The flesh joined together is being joined between a married person and one unmarried. Notice the singular reference to a person that is married, and so and one unmarried. So if you take a person that's married and blink in a definition, sending it over to unmarried, that's the same as saying the person is married yet divorced. This brings forward the need to understand how can you be married yet divorced? Well, it's because God joined you together, and He didn't take the marriage apart. So even though you take it apart, when God doesn't take it apart, you become a married person in spite of the fact that you went off in disobedience and divorced. So that covers the essence of Mark 10:11, where Christ is quoted as saying, divorce and remarriage is adultery. So the singular in divorced is adultery. Singular in the sense that divorce is adultery and remarriage is adultery. The defining of adultery goes on to say, or between a married person and the spouse of another. And to dissect that is to understand that it's from divorce of adultery, it goes into remarriage as adultery. And so how does this equate to a definition of remarriage? It's remarriage based on still it's speaking of a singular person that goes on to marry the spouse of another. Here, remarriage is being defined by way of acknowledging that the person being defined right here is still a person, singular person, having been married already, even though it suggests already taken apart, still yet the person is married. As such a person, when they go on to the spouse, to become the spouse of another, that's the equivalent to the word remarriage. So the gist of this definition is to maintain singular accountability to God for your choices. It's looking into your spirit instead of mucking your definition of adultery by pointing fingers at your spouse and pretty soon scrambling the definition. To suppose a marriage is almost likened unto doubting that God joined you together. If you believed that God joined you together and doesn't take it apart, you wouldn't be using such loose terms as supposing that a marriage be true. The defining goes on to reiterate the definition of adultery when really they did very excellent in the first definition. As you might recall from prior studies, the nature of adultery is one of which is to adulterate, to pollute, to take that which is pure and make it impure. One of the ways that this happens is by, you can more clearly see how it happens by looking to the differences between the spirit and the flesh, where the spirit is a calling to God to become one with Him through Christ, and the flesh wants to be large and in charge and be rather contrary. Quite frankly, a simple look at the subject goes toward a Paul quote. I've pulled up Galatians 5. As good a verse as any is 19. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, etc., idolatry included. Here I would like to add to that a clarification of the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other. So I come back to the Catholic Encyclopedia to clarify that here the definition is being defined as a carnal connection and then explaining what it is. Over here, it's a carnal intercourse, and then explains what it is. And of course, intercourse has a degree of influence that wants to offer you a stumbling block that it is talking about sexual intercourse when really it's not. And so we come to Mosaic law, and in addressing adultery, again, it's still carnal intercourse, and of course, the sexual definition begins to be sought in Leviticus 20:10. I've pulled up Leviticus 20:10 to clarify one particular unique point, and that is just like the last two explanations on denominations like to use technical expertise writing to cause you to assume something that they're not actually saying. So here's another example of it. That man, and the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. As you revert back to Christ's definition of adultery, here Moses is explaining the essence of to be with another man's wife. The with is remarriage. Of course, there are those that want to define with as being sexual, but then you're turning away from Christ's definition. A person can suggest that verses 11 through deep into the chapter are examples of why the word with is meant to be sexual. But if you look at what is being addressed sexually and allow it to speak to you that none of these sexual definitions or examples carry with it the word adultery. The adultery is up here on a different with, and then there's sexual that isn't addressed as adultery. But again, that is influential in causing you to assume that the adultery being addressed is sexual when it's really divorce and remarriage. I've brought it to an added outline to adultery is wanting to address the alternate defining, and that being considering now the act in itself, adultery forbidden by the sixth commandment, has in it a twofold malice. And of course, when you take it to Christ and look at John 8:3 and 4, you find that the Pharisees defined adultery, but Christ didn't concur it. I dare pull up the word idea as the guilt of the crime, and the idea is that that by way of John 8, Christ didn't clarify the definition of adultery except for just send them away as go away. And so then as a quality definition would be, there is an idea of guilt brought by the Pharisees, but is only conjured and pondered and not validated by Christ. But while on the subject of chastity, there's the falsity of this doctrine appears from the very etymology of the word adultery. For the term signifies the going into the bed of another. And of course, the signifies is, go look at Leviticus 20, verses 11 to onward, and that signifies sexual subjects. But it's also something that is falsely being addressed under an assumption. Falsely in the sense that adultery is a sexual definition.